Hello all my math friends again. So we're on the same worksheet, simplifying trig expressions, and now we're going to try problem number 14 together. So one of the things that I look at here with problem number 14 is first on that denominator. This is one of our Pythagorean identities. Secant squared theta minus 1 is equivalent to tangent squared theta. So I'm going to replace that, and I'm also going to write the secant squared theta on the numerator here again. And I can think about at this point changing secant squared theta into 1 divided by cosine squared theta. And I could also change the tangent squared theta into the sine squared theta over the cosine squared theta. So we have one of these problems again where we could divide a fraction by a fraction. So we keep the numerator and we change the operation to multiply, and we multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. And if we notice here, these two terms are exactly the same, so we can cancel them out. We're left with 1 divided by sine squared theta, which is equivalent to what? What's it equivalent to? Remember our reciprocal identity, so cosecant squared theta, and then we can call it done. If we move on to number 15, we have a problem that's a little bit different here. Notice how our exponents here are a 4. So we have sine to the 4th theta minus cosine to the power of 4 theta. If you think back to Algebra 2 when you factored, this is really kind of like a difference of squares factoring type of problem. When you have two perfect squares with a subtraction in the middle, we can factor this using what we know about difference of squares. So I'm going to write my two sets of parentheses here. If I took the square root of sine 4th theta, this is going to be sine squared theta and sine squared theta. I know if I multiply those two things together, I'm going to get sine to the power of 4 theta. And the same thing here, I'm going to have cosine squared theta and cosine squared theta. And I'm almost done. I just need a plus over here and a minus over here. So I now have sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta times sine squared theta minus cosine squared theta. This look familiar to anyone? What is that? Where can we find that? Hey, you're right. It's the Pythagorean identity. So sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta is equal to 1. And then we have our sine squared theta minus cosine squared theta over here. So we could think about maybe doing difference of squares again, but it's not going to make it any simpler because if we think about our answer, sine squared theta minus cosine squared theta, if I factor that again, I'm going to get sine plus cosine and sine minus cosine. So that's not any simpler than what we had before. So I think that this is probably the simplest that we can get here, and so we can call that one done.